talk. And while we were listening, it often, it was striking me, as it often does, how much we in archives have always been concerned with the world of big data. We are big data custodians. And what Hamish Maxwell-Stewart was talking about was some of the amazing insights you can get from analytics on structured data. The registers and the recordings of Tasmanian convicts were the structured data of their day. But we know, of course, that there is an incredible wealth and richness to be found in the unstructured data that we hold. And we're now at the beginning, I think, of an era in which we're just starting to tap into and realise some of the potential of that unstructured data. Admittedly, digitisation programs and then the ensuing analytics that are possible from our records are expensive and slow, but we're getting there. And so it was great when I saw on the program that Dr Hanlen was going to be talking about emerging technology for text in archives. I thought, well, what a fabulous complement to our last talk. So I'll introduce Dr Hanlen now. We're really pleased to have him here as our third keynote speaker. Dr Leif Hanlen is Director of the NICTA e-health business team, which is responsible for developing new data analysis for national scale personalised health. He holds 3 patents and over 70 peer-reviewed publications, including 2 recent reports on the implementation of a national telehealth system in Australia. Leif has a background in machine learning for e-health applications, telecommunications for body area networks within the Australian e-government technology cluster. Prior to this role, he has been variously employed as Director of Health at NICTA, a high-voltage electric power engineer, lecturer in computer science and researcher in wireless radio systems. He's a member of the IEEE, the Australian Information Industry Association's e-health task force, and Standards Australia Telehealth Group. Can you join me in welcoming Dr Hanlen?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you can see from that job description, or multiples, that I have a very short attention span. So, I broke it. So a question for you. Where are the slides? Do I click on it? You see, I'm an ICT person, so ICT never works.
Just look away for a moment.
That's all right. Let me start talking nonetheless, because I know that I'm standing between you and morning tea, so I'll start with my conclusion first. If there's one message that I can give you, it is digitize it. And when I say digitize it, I don't mean photocopy it or take a picture of it. I mean turn it into something that a machine can use. So turning photos into text is stupidly hard. Any human who's tried to read a doctor's report knows this. If you expect a machine to take a text photograph and give you intelligence, good luck. That's why transcription costs a lot of money. On the other hand, if you spend a little bit of your grant money, a little bit of your time, a little bit of your effort in turning that photograph into something that can be put onto a typewriter, you've suddenly opened up the world of analytics. And the previous speaker showed this. So for all of those photographs of all those hand-drawn books that me sitting down the back there couldn't read, one slide showed one transcription of all that data. Didn't have to be numeric, it was text. And once you've got text, you've got information that's actually usable by everybody else. Is it coming up or not? It's not going to happen?
I'll find it.
All right. No, it's not. It's perfectly all right. So, I'll just work without the slides, shall I? Nowadays we have computer technology that can effectively read and summarize books for you. Now, they can't tell you whether Moby Dick is better than The Old Man and the Sea, and they can't give a summary that would be better than a high school or probably even a primary school child reading the book for you. But what they can do is what computers are fabulously good at, which is comparing like with like and comparing differences, which is to say, if your summary is of the form that a stereotypical high school librarian would give you, that is, I want to find the books on, insert your favorite topic here, and the librarian would say, you know what, you want to be down that shelf, don't bother with the red one, it's rubbish, but the three behind it are really quite good, and somewhere in amongst all of that is the key bit of stuff that you've got to find. Now, if you think of the benefit that librarian actually gave, it's not that he or she knew what was in the book. They probably did, but they weren't going to bother telling me because it's my job to go and find it. But it's that they knew where to find it. They knew that the red book was rubbish, even though the librarian before them had bought it. And they knew how to track that information down. So I'm going to argue that the archivist's role has moved. It is not the role of storage, of protecting, of saving and keeping it safe. Yes, it's all about that. But nowadays, in the digital world at least, and moreover, often in the storage world, the protecting and the storing of information can be done better by third parties. So in my case, who stores all my information? Amazon. Because, quite frankly, I don't trust myself to back up my computer. I don't trust my IT department to back up my computer. Why not? Well, quite frankly, Amazon works internationally, and they have the money to buy the best IT guys, and I don't. So whoever's working for me is not the guy that Amazon employed. Right? It's the John West argument. So if I want the best, I'm going to go and use the best, and they do storage better than I can. But what they can't do is what that librarian in the high school did. That librarian didn't buy all the books and make sure the bricks and mortar were under control. Somebody in facilities did that. Some outsourced group did that. So, in effect, what that librarian was not a storage and protector of information, it was a facilitator. It was somebody who pointed the student to walk down the corridor to the right point, to the right book, to the right piece of information, and maybe even help them extract the information from it afterwards. In the same way, as archivists, I'm an IT guy, as you can probably tell, you are uniquely placed. So if you consider the previous speaker, the archivist's role is effectively recreating, right? Going and finding, digging up all those records that somebody put together but nonetheless didn't bother to store in a convenient way. More for them. Now, right now, every single one of us is generating our own records, is generating the tweets and the mobile phone data and the information and the emails and. Not one of us is collectively putting it back together again so that somebody 150 years later can dig through it. Right? Some of our emails, being government employees, are probably going onto an archive system, and some of our policy documents, being government employees, are probably going onto an archive system. And that's the tip, the top of the tip of the iceberg. Think of everything else below that iceberg. Think of all of the interactions you're having here and now. Not one of which I will imagine will ever get into archives under normal circumstances. Okay, I know, because I get these sort of media reports, that Leif Hanlen is appearing at this particular conference today. Somebody in the media found that on a Google search. And so that's probably going to show up somewhere. Right? And anybody else who's got a name recognition system is probably going to show up somewhere. But the real information, what did I say, what did you say, what did you get out of this, some of it you're not writing down on paper. And that is instantly archivable. The stuff you're writing on paper, look, one day someone else is going to have to stand up here and say, please, can everyone get their conference notes, and please, would you digitize it, and please, would you... Right? That's some poor grad student's problem 50 years from now. Right here, right now, those of us who've bothered with a laptop or who've got a little tablet in front of them, whilst you're generating that content, an archival process is going on behind your fingertips. It's called Google. It's called the web, it's called Twitter, the social media site that you're pumping the data into. Is it awesome? That archival process is happening despite the true archivists looking after the data. And so in a sense, a lot of the storage, a lot of the record keeping is not only out of our hands and out of the state's hands. States are reasonably easy to negotiate with and get historical data from. Google, not so much. Third-party private enterprise keeps data for a particular reason. It's not because it's very pretty for people 50 years in the future. Woohoo, that's me. All right. That's all right. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me for so long. Let me jump ahead a little bit. Haha. So of course it's not going to work that way either. All right. So there's my conclusions. The world is, in fact, very different to 10 years ago and is irreconcilably different 10 years before there. Information is the new currency. And I'll go a step further than that, which is to say that documents are symptomatic. They're a point in time. We have to move away from the idea that a document represents anything other than a spot in time and a particular example of what was the information. And you can see that in the previous talks. All these records of who was doing what to whom and why and how, etc., they were recorded on paper by some cleric somewhere just to keep a track of what was going on. And the fact is that because the cleric is gone and the history's gone and everybody else is gone, all that we're left with are these tiny little breadcrumbs. And sometimes we're so lucky that the breadcrumbs line up. But right here, right now, we have the access to the generators of the information. The mobile phones, the tablets, the people behind them typing away. The generation of information is archived instantaneously. We are no longer at the point where somebody communicates by word of mouth and that guy over there did something and I write it down 3 days later and 500 years later you get to see it. At the point of generation, so too archival. And when you think about the world in that mode, we now have, see, I have to find the page down. Analytics. So, how long have I got? 15 minutes, all right? So we'll run through this fast. So here's my question for you. And this is a question that I believe everyone should ask themselves in the archival world. What is your value add? And I've sort of answered this with the librarian analogy. Your value add is not that you have the most amazing waterproof cardboard box. Right? That poor person over there is the state archivist from Washington. They had a bad day. It flooded. Now, I know I can sort of get away with making fun of it and it looks sort of funny over there and we all sort of grin. But here's the problem. What's inside those cardboard boxes is a whole bunch of paper documents. So it's not as though the problem is that the boxes weren't waterproof. My argument is the problem is that things were there at all. What were we doing with boxes and boxes of cardboard filled with paper, printed out and written out? What were we doing with this? Well, fundamentally, what we were doing with it is saying, I've got it safe, and it's in a box, and it's down the back there somewhere. And if you want it, you can come and ask me to get it for you. Well, that's not access. That's not open. That's safe in the same way that my car is safe at home. So, nonetheless, that's all right. This will do. Down, yeah. It's all right. I'll roll. So my question for you then is, fundamentally, are you open? Open access, open data, open source are these new buzzwords. What do I mean by open? What I mean is that you create the data as an archivist not for prosperity, but for reuse. and you reuse it in a way that you've never even thought of it before. Which is why I say digitize the text, not the photo. But the photo is great for me, and it's great for a slide, and it's good for a book, and it shows exactly what that handwriting looked like, and it's beautiful, and we should have it. But it's entirely useless when I type it into Google. And the problem then is that the only way to get access to that photo is to find the dude who took it or to find the photo. If, on the other hand, you think of open as in anybody can use it in any way that they want at any time, then suddenly that information is live. This site, which you probably can't even read, is a web capture from the US federal site. Everything on that federal site is stored, archived, detailed, all visits are measured, the usual analytics that any website does. The difference between the US and, say, the Australian government website is the US one provides all that analytic data openly to anybody to use it in any way they want. Free of charge, Creative Commons, do as you will. What that means is that people are creating companies that help guide you through the US federal government website because they've got the data. And they can help you along the way. And so all these facilitators are popping out of the woodwork because now they have the data to help you through. So, let's go. So the question is, well, who am I and who is this NICTA that I come from to make these grand claims and these broad accusations? NICTA is Australia's ICT Centre of Excellence. We've been around for nearly 11 years. We have 700 staff, of which half are PhD students. Approximately 1/4 of Australia's ICT PhD cohort comes through NICTA. We don't grant PhDs, but we partner with more than 22 Australian universities and international universities to grant PhDs to the students that work with us. Over the last 11 years, we've launched 15 startups in all things ICT. Things including a bionic eye, built in Melbourne, an operating system that provably can't crash, an implant system that electronically cancels pain. So I don't know if anyone's bought those cool headphones that electronically cancel noise. We've got a thread that goes into the spinal cord that turns pain off. We also work around text. So I'd like you to start with this image in your mind. This is real. I didn't make this up. Right? This was an art study, but nonetheless. This, to me, is very much the document archival world. That is, if I can turn it into a PDF, if I could print it out but not quite, and stick it in a box, it's safe and it's stored and it's great. I want to move away from that mode. I want to suggest that, yes, we have to store it and save it, but we've got to go beyond. And firstly, if we want to predict the future, so part of my remit when I came was to say, they said, would you tell us the future of text? And I said, well, if I could do that, I wouldn't be here. If I could guarantee you what the future is going to be, I'd have invested in it, and I'd have my own plane landing on my own island, and I wouldn't be at a conference explaining it to you. Why do I say that? Because any future prediction that you actually get the person to stand in front of you for, I wouldn't trust. So, given that I don't trust any prediction that I've got, what do I trust? Well, I trust looking at the new content creator. I trust looking at the person who is going to be building the new systems, who will be using the new text, who will be delivering the new content. Typically she, we have a growing cohort in ICT even, which is male-dominated, of female entrepreneurs who are really delivering societal benefit, not the Facebook clowns, but everybody else. She fundamentally believes in the mobile approach. She expects the technology to work for her, and she expects community support for the technology. That is, the technology will develop and support the community as a part of its normal approach, rather than the other way around, which is a subsidized technology made by the community but supporting the entrepreneur. So some of the trends, where does this go? Well, the other thing to look at is how fast are we growing? And right now we have the usual cost of storage halves every 2 years, cost of processing halves every 2 years. We have the cloud, which effectively means you trade CapEx. I don't buy an IT department and a server and a basement to put them in. I just invest in something. Amazon's the most obvious, but there are many. And sometimes because of diminishing returns, because of scale, that also reduces OPEX. So in a sense, I pay less rent than I would have paid had I bought the house outright. At the other side of the coin is what's known as the personal media revolution. Anyone who's ever tweeted, anyone who's ever taken a photo on their phone and put it somewhere, you are part of that generation of data by the person, for the person, and the resharing of that. And the next stage beyond there is collaboration and knowledge through reuse, which in its simplest form you may think of as crowdsourcing. But quite honestly, it's where you have groups of people who are not only generating that information and throwing it up for some third party to use, but who are now dipping back into the pool in some way and using that collective information for their own private benefit again. And examples of this are starting to emerge. The other side of this coin is step away from hardware. So think of this in terms of everything I've just said a moment ago is hardware-based. Hardware is getting faster, cheaper, more, right? At approximately exponential every 2 years. Great. But if we think of the growth, think of the phones on the left. So phones went from 0 to 5 billion in 26 years. Software downloads for one particular type of phone went from 0 to 25 billion in 26 months. The difference is not just the speed, but on the left-hand side, I've got to have one phone. Well, you know what? I've got one phone. How many more phones do I need? None. Right? Maybe I'll buy a new one, but I'll throw the old one away. How many software apps do I need? Well, I need all of them. Right? And you need all of them too. And so do they. And so what we have is this network effect. So it's not simply doubling, but it's doubling on the order of population. And so software applications grow faster, grow more effective, grow more explicit or ubiquitous than hardware ever will. And what this means is that smarter gets smarter faster than computers ever can. And so where we're going now is we're starting to see these technologies where it's a given that online is here to stay. So it's not a matter of plugging into the network anymore. It's not even a matter of loading up the Wi-Fi anymore. We're moving to a world where users expect the online experience whether they can get it or not. On a plane, I want Wikipedia. What do I do? Well, until recently, I wasn't allowed to turn my Wi-Fi on. So we have technology that downloads the entirety of Wikipedia, including pictures, and puts it all on your phone. We have other technology that sits around and can download your entire DNA on your phone. Your phone is approximately 10 billion times more powerful than the computer of the Apollo 11 40 years ago. Now, if you think about that in reverse, that means 40 years ago, imagine holding the Apollo 11 computer, well, it's holding the Apollo 11 computer, and saying, you know what, 40 years from now, stuff's going to be faster. Yeah. Okay, but more than that, we have this network effect, internet access, internet use of data, and these 40 years are not predictable holding today's technology in your hand. I defy anyone to pick this up and say, you know what, I can predict 40 times exponential growth from here. So where we're going now is the idea of the gigabit person day. So don't think of how much data have I got on my computer or how much data is there in the cloud and how many terabits, et cetera, et cetera. Rather, it's how much data do you create yourself per day, and equally, how much data do you use per day? Today, it's mostly asymmetric. Mostly we're downloaders, mostly we're watchers, mostly we're observers. Going forward, we are going to be creators as well. Each one of these bubbles is something that is worthwhile to archive, in the sense of if you want to know what my life looked like 50 years from now, you probably want to know all the stuff I was beeping with at the same time, because I wasn't just sitting there. Leif did that today. All of that interaction that I had with that online world is defining my life. 5 minutes. So I'll jump a little bit. Those of you who've heard of Netflix, yes? Awesome. So Netflix is the world's digital library for videos. At least Netflix says so. The point being, though, that Netflix is more than a library. So the difference between, say, Netflix and the old Apple Store video library, or your video library that you physically went to, is that Netflix knows what you watch, when you watch, how you watched it, whether you paused it and stopped it, whether you rewound it and looked at it again, what you did with that data. The experience is obviously good for Netflix. They know that I like Kevin Spacey, so they make Game of Thrones. Woohoo! Profit for Netflix. But it's also part of the experience. People don't sit and watch movies the way they watch newsreels, start to finish, there's your broadcast, go home. They watch it interactively. And as a result of that, Netflix has recommendation engines, which is effectively working out what I like, what you like, what she likes, and what he likes, and telling the next person that we all probably look the same, so you'll probably like that too. That recommendation engine influences society in the sense that if I keep telling you that everybody likes blue, everybody likes blue. Guess what? Isn't that amazing? This is also used by the bookstores, by Amazon, by LinkedIn. This recommendation by social is effectively where we are now. And where we're going is the archival library has become a creator. Netflix have their own vice president of development. So Game of Thrones was created by Netflix. The library suddenly started writing its own books, because they can make a profit that way, and they are now part of the generation cycle. I'll let this roll past because you can watch it for yourself. There. We sit in about the Web3 world, the social media world. That's where IT lives now. The printout of the internet was conceivable maybe 10 years ago. You could have printed the internet out. You could have got everything as a PDF document and gone for your life. But nowadays, what are you going to archive? Well, when everything's up in the cloud, how do you even get your hands on it? And when the data itself is live, when you're taking sensors from grass that's growing, you're telling me the temperature of the day, and you've got the Bureau of Meteorology, and you've got all this data flowing around live, and some analytics engines eat it live, and they generate reports live, and you store the printout of the PDF, what have you seen? Nothing. Everything else is part of the real world, part of the data that's been needing to be worked on. So we can amp this up, and we can talk about more, and we can say, well, where are we going? Well, where we're going... let's stay here for a second. I'll let it speak for itself. I have an asterisk there because I do actually have a library card because I like my kids to go to the library and see what books look like and work. But in reality, I have an adjunct position at several universities. I could have used any of their libraries, and I haven't for the last 3 years. Why? Because I can get it. Right? And the fact is, it's a little bit bolshy, but the way I work now is if I can't get it from Google or something like it, I don't care. I'll move on. I'll find something else. I'll go and get something else. Which means that if you've got it safely stored in a library down the road and all I have to do is drive down to get it, sorry, you don't exist. And that means that more or less you'll be very safe because you won't need to worry about patrons. Whilst I'm over here on Google saying, gee whiz, there's nothing much from the 1950s, is there? This has grown in the software world to a group called Maven. There's an idea of built by Maven. I'll come back very briefly. Software used to be very much like reading books, generating code, writing code. You would read the other people's work, you would build your own, and you'd release that. Nowadays, there are repositories, libraries, that actively say which are the bits of software that need to be built, and effectively, I, as a coder, write a few lines of code, and I say, I want this, 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 and please tell me whatever is needed to make the rest of it. And this daemon, Maven, goes off, trundles through all of the libraries and finds all the bits of software that I need, sucks it all down, builds me the book, and here I am. I've got code. And so we have code that has at the front of it sort of built by Maven, because effectively I wrote 3 lines and Maven wrote 400,000. Thank you. I will jump that right to the end. Doo-doo. That's where I want you to think. as archivists, we live in this world of managed, store, reuse information, but open access means that everybody else becomes part of that archival community as well, and their work leverages your work. Thank you.
I just thought I'd give you an opportunity. I see you've got Maven down there on the slide, and you said you'd come back to the Built by Maven, so here's your chance.
Thank you. I somewhat skipped through it, but effectively, Maven is an example. It's one. I don't wish to promote it as the one. There are many. But if you Google Maven, you will find this and you'll find all the information you want, which is why I picked that one. The key to Maven is that it is a software service that does the job that I was characterizing the high school librarian as. What Maven does is it goes to all the millions of libraries of software that exist in the world, on all the various libraries of software that exists on all the various servers. And what Maven does is it says to each one of those libraries, hey, you, library, tell me what you've got that might be useful for that guy down the road to build his software with. And the library says, you know what, I think you need 1, and I think you need 7, and maybe the book with the red stuff in it. And Maven comes back with a list of material. It also comes back with a list of dependencies. So you say, you know what, the red book refers to the blue book, and the green software, and the yellow one as well. Oh, well, I'll need those too then. Boom, 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 boom. And so it collects all of this bibliography, effectively, for software. And what Maven then does is it sorts out all of the interdependencies. All those linkages are done. On top of that, the software writer then effectively says, I need code that builds me X. Off Maven goes and brings back all the code that builds that for them, and that goes into the repository. Now that's a bit of a software-centric view of the world, but I want you to think of that now in text. In text processing, we have machines that can summarize. We have machines that can evaluate A versus B. We have machines that can give categorization, that can classify according to Dewey Decimal. All those admin tasks that a librarian may have once had to do. So in a sense, we are at the stage now where I can write a bibliography of my material. I can tell you that I need to know something about X and something about Y, and please give me the details on A, B, C, and bring it all together. And we are getting to the point now, most people would use Google to do this, but we're getting to the point now of programmatically combining pieces of text documents in ways the author of that document never conceived. So it's not a matter of saying book A and book B. It's a matter of saying paragraph 1 is interesting, paragraph 7 is interesting, and paragraph 3 is interesting. Bring them all together and give me a diagram from those. Programmatically, that is the equivalent in text that Maven has in software.
Ask everyone to thank Dr. Hanlen.